you introduce yourself as Jonathan Gannon, but everybody calls you JG. What do you prefer? Is it Coach Gannon? Is it John? Jonathan?
It's definitely not John. Yeah, I mean, some guys call me Coach Gannon, but I go by JG. It's easy and quick, and to me, I'm one of the guys, so JG is a pretty good title for me, I think.
And was that something that everybody called you when you were playing and stuff?
It was.
This at Louisville?
It was, yeah, because I didn't, honestly, I don't like John, so Jonathan, 3 syllables, kind of longer, so it just turned into JG. JG, get over here. So.
Well, you got some energy, man. I met you briefly with Michael, I don't know, that was 2 or 3 months ago, but I could tell when you came into the studio, I could hear you down the way a little bit, yelling out to Tim Delaney, our boss. So
yeah.
You got some energy, man, which has been contagious and infectious. I've heard a lot of guys talk about that. Have you had a chance to kind of get settled into the Valley?
Yeah. My crew's out here, just got out here last weekend, Memorial Day weekend, and waiting for the house to get kind of done. But really enjoyed the city. The times I haven't been out a lot, but I like to go explore restaurants, and I think that the city has some good things to offer, and excited to be here, really. So it's good to get the crew here. They start school in August or whatever, the older two. But really, honestly, really excited for a new city. You know, a lot of people talk about coaching. Well, one of the negatives is you move around, and my first year in the NFL was 2007. I've been on 7 NFL teams. I always kind of thought it was a positive. I liked living in new cities, and then when people call you, hey, we're going for a bachelor party in Nashville. Oh, I lived there for 2 years. Where are you guys going? You know what I mean? Make sure you go to this spot or whatever it is. So I like that we've lived in some different places.
Do you have a spot picked out yet, like a regular spot you guys go to?
Not so much yet. I've been to some good places though, up kind of around the Fashion Mall right there. I like Francine. Like Nobu, like Steak 44.
So you're picking all the expensive places.
I'm going to Ocean 44
nice.
In a week or two. So the Henry. I like the Henry a lot. The Henry's cool for breakfast. I haven't been there for dinner, but I like the Henry. I went after church one Sunday morning. It was packed. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Are people starting to recognize you, or can you pretty much go in and nobody says anything to you?
It depends where you go, but you do get the recognition of, oh, hey, you're the new coach. You know what I mean? Good luck. Go Cards, you know. It's cool. I kind of like to stay under the radar anyhow, but hopefully we start winning, get this thing rolling. You can't go anywhere.
So obviously I want to talk a lot about you as a coach and philosophy and some of the things you've done in your career, but I want to go back to growing up. You grew up in Cleveland, right? Mm-hmm. Football, basketball, track, 3-sport guy?
Correct, yep.
Who were your teams growing up? Browns, Cavs?
You know, whoever. I was a front runner.
Okay.
Whoever was winning, honestly. Really, I was a huge Charles Woodson fan, right kind of the end of grade school, high school. So he was a Michigan guy, so I was kind of always pulling for Michigan, even though I was on Ohio guy. But honestly, who was ever winning? I concentrated more on the players than the teams, I think.
And you played football at Louisville, I know, until you had a career-ending injury. But did you look at going elsewhere? Did you think about, could you play basketball or done track?
I could have played. So my sophomore year, the head basketball coach at my high school and the head football coach sit me down and they say, JG, you can go to a Division I school and play basketball. You can go to a Division I school and play football. You're not going to go to the NBA. You have a chance to go to the NFL. So their pitch to me was stop playing AAU basketball and start running track. So that's when I really started. I started to run track after after my sophomore year. And I lost my jump shot, but I got faster. So I knew probably football was my highest ceiling, I think, and that's what I did. So I had a couple different offers to play, pretty good offers to play Division I football. I picked Louisville because they were the one offer that was going to allow me to play DB, because I played both ways in high school. A lot of teams wanted me to play receiver, and I kind of wanted to play DB, so that's one of the reasons I picked Louisville.
And Bobby Petrino was the head coach, right?
John L. Smith.
John L. Smith,
yeah,
okay.
So I played for John L. Smith, got redshirted, played my redshirt freshman year. That's when I got hurt, the 10th game there. But we were good that year for John L., and he took a Michigan State head coaching job. Right. Bobby Petrino comes. He was the offensive coordinator at the time at Auburn.
Yeah.
So he comes, and then but I never really played for Bobby. I sat out that next year, and then I tried to go through the following spring ball, and I couldn't function, and that's kind of when I started student assistant coaching. And Bobby sat me down. He's like, "Have you ever thought about coaching?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but I wanted to play 10 years in the NFL and then coach at my high school in Cleveland." He says, "Well, you're not going to do that." So I said, "Thank you." And so he really gave me my first job, my first start. You know what I mean? And I was kind of submerged in. And Bobby was a very detailed, disciplined guy, and a mastermind of offense. So. And I obviously was on defense, but it was cool. It was a cool transition for me. I was down about not being able to play, but it was like, okay, I'm going to dive all into this. So then I started student assistant. When I graduated, made me the defensive GA. My first year as defensive GA, we were top 5 in the country, and he took the Atlanta Falcons head job and brought me with him. So I was in the NFL at 24, and that's how I got my start.
Well, I remember my first college football game for ESPN. I was actually on Harry Douglas's radio show last week, and we were talking a little bit about covering him, but then also we were talking about the NBA playoffs, but talking about covering him, and then mentioned to him, I remember 2004, it was a Sunday night game against Kentucky. It was the first game of the season. I don't know if you remember. I don't know, you were there then, obviously.
I was there,
as a GA.
Yeah.
Coach Petrino, I always felt, and I know there's other things that have happened off the field that he's already spoken of and had to answer for, but in terms of as a football mind, he's incredibly respected. What was your biggest takeaway from being around him and from a football perspective in terms of how maybe he shaped you as a coach?
Yeah, really good question, Dave. The details of a play. And it was the first, because you're as a player, you really don't, but you don't know. And I remember sitting in a staff meeting and him talking about outside zone out of 12 personnel, like trip swing, and I'm like, wow, that is I don't have a clue what football is. And just the different ways to attack defenses and leverages and number counts and IDs in the run game, it was whoo, it just exploded in my brain. But he obviously has been a head coach at a lot of different places for a long time, and has always had success, good teams, always good offenses. And we used to laugh with Bobby at Louisville. The offense was always better than the defense. I said, because he stole all the good players and put them on offense. You know what I mean? Harry Douglas, you know, he should have been playing corner, but he goes and has a career being a receiver in the NFL. It was really that kind of shaped my mind of just how detailed you have to be if you want to be a good coach. And I'm still working on that part of my game to this day, you know what I mean? But that was it was like a master class of footwork and leverage and hand placement. And it was like, wow, there's a lot of stuff going on each play. That fans really don't know, how would they know? Sure. But, I think there was an appreciation from me that there's a lot that goes into this job.
It's funny that you say that. So, and I brought this guy up a couple times on this podcast, Urban Meyer, who I worked with in between Florida and Ohio State. He was my booth partner, him and Chris Spielman. We had a 3-man booth together. And I remember I used to watch film all the time, in preparation for games. And he said to me one time, he's like, well, what are you looking at? When you're watching film, what are you looking at? And I said, well, I'm just kind of watching the players. For me, for my job, play-by-play, I'm not as focused on zone defense and all this stuff. But anyway, after working with him, I stopped watching film because I realized it wasn't doing me any good because I had no idea what the call was, no idea what certain individuals. And that's one thing I think about football that most people don't understand is players, there's so many things that go into a play, responsibilities that a player has, or maybe they misheard something or something that you prepared for changed, right? As a coach, and I got to think in the NFL, your brain's constantly going, thinking about, okay, if they do this, how do we do this? And who else were some of your influences as a coach that got you kind of to this point?
Yeah, right from the jump when we went to Atlanta, the defensive coordinator was Mike Zimmer for Bobby, and the DB coach was Emmett Thomas. And so long-time NFL guys, both had coordinated, both were DB coaches. I would say those two from the start, just about DB play and philosophy of how to play defense with Coach Zimmer. And then I went and scouted for a couple of years after that, and then I got back into coaching. I was quality control in Tennessee, and Jerry Gray was the coordinator, and it was a kind of a different philosophy than Zim. And there's a lot of ways to play defense, out there that can be successful. And that was kind of cool because it was like, oh, wow, like there's different ways you can do this, and there's, here, look at the advantages of doing it like this. And then I got back with Zim, and the thing about coaching is pretty cool. I think the best coaches are curious. And what I mean by that is just because I believe something or something has worked, or I'm convicted about this technique or this style of defense, like there's always change every year. I think the best coaches are adaptable, and they're curious. They watch tape, they talk to people, they ask questions, they watch more tape, they talk to the players. It's like, hey, this is how we've always done it, but what if we could do it like this? Like, what if we just added this, or what if we took out this? And when I got back with Zim, so 2007, 2014, so 7 years in between there. And it was like there's a couple things that were the same, but then there are some other things. As he was a defensive coordinator from Atlanta, he went to Cincinnati and had all those good defenses with Marvin Lewis. And it was like, wow, like, Zim, I thought you said this is the way to play it. And he was like, yeah, I've changed. Here's why. And then he'd show you the tape. So it was always kind of cool to me. Like, that kind of hit me. And like I said, then I went to Indy, and Matt Eberflus was the coordinator under Frank Reich. And he came up a different style of defense. He was a longtime coordinator in college, and then was in Dallas for a couple of years, and he was under some different coordinators. And we played a significantly different style of defense in Indy than we did in Minnesota. And that was pretty cool for me, because that was kind of my first true position, first DB job that I had, because I was an assistant DB coach for Zim. And I had to kind of learn on the run. And I would ask Flu things, hey, like, how do you want this being played? How do you see this being played? And he gave me a lot of autonomy, like, here's what I need out of the call, you get it done. And I had to study. Like, it wasn't like, oh, here's your manual, go teach this. You know what I mean? Anyone can really do that. It was like, all right, how do I make this make sense? How do I make it clear for the players? What can we execute? We got to change your leverage here. You got to do this. You got to do that. And that was really cool for me. And I really felt like that style of defense for 3 years. Then when I became a coordinator in Philly, I kind of meshed what I liked off of both of them. And there are some similarities between the two, but there's some significant differences too. And I was like, man, well, if we can do this, then why can't we do that, And then also with saying that, I was always in a 4-down system. Flu and Zim were 4-down guys. Jerry was a 4-down guy. And you start to see, like, here's the good things about playing 4-down all the time, but here are some downfalls of playing 4-down all the time. You start to talk to offensive guys. Hey, how do you attack Zim? How do you attack Flu? How do you attack Jerry? How do you attack 4-down teams and mixed downs, pass downs, this and that? And you start to talk to offensive guys, and that led me to think, okay, I need to start studying some 3-4 teams. So I started studying some 3-4 teams, and then I started reaching out to people that knew the ins and outs of 3-4 defense. So when I got to Philly, they asked, hey, what scheme are you going to run? And I said, I really don't have one. And that was true. I know, yeah, we have a scheme. We have a way to play defense. But my point to that is you got to be able to, certain offenses that you go against, if you only have 4-down, there's some hard downs that are going to go on. If you only play 3-down, there's some hard downs that are going to go on. So I always thought, like, hey, it's all about the players. It doesn't matter the scheme or anything like that. It's the execution and what the players are doing. But, hey, if we can align our people differently versus different people to get them in advantageous positions, we should be able to do that. And that's kind of where we're at right now, and that's how we kind of played in Philly. And taking over Philly, Jim Schwartz was a coordinator who was a 4-down guy. And that team was 4-down for a long time, and there was really good elements of 4-down. We played more 4-down than 3-down. But I thought the 3-down stuff, it took a little bit of time to get kind of grooving where we wanted it to be, but it was good for us, you know what I mean? And I think that helped us play good defense.
So what you're saying is you don't have a dogmatic approach, like I'm going to do it this way.
No.
And there are obviously guys that are like that, and it's hard to survive anymore in the NFL doing it.
You can, you know what I mean? You can, but I use the phrase adapt or die, man. You know, the game's changing, the players are changing, you know, like, I mean, even you got a 7 or 8 year vet and a rookie coming in, like they're different people. You know what I mean? They play football differently. That 8 to 10 year gap of age difference for players that are on our team, they grew up playing differently. They went to high school and played differently. They played college ball is significantly different right now. So it's like, you know, you got to be able to blend the two there. But yeah, I'm very, I guess I'm curious. I would say that's kind of a word, growth mindset, whatever you want to call it. Like, hey, what is the best way in 2023? You know what I mean? You try to figure it out, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I am not, here's my playbook and here's what we're running. I don't think that's the way to go.
So what should Cardinal fans expect in terms of how this defense looks? Mm-hmm. What that you've learned over will this defense look a lot like your Philly defenses in terms of scheme, in terms of alignment, or will they look like maybe something you did earlier in your career?
Yeah, we're figuring that out right now. That's a good question, Dave. Obviously, we'll have elements of what we did in Philly. But again, my first thing about schematics is it's all about the players that you have and who you're going against. So we're going to try – I don't really care what we look like as long as we're executing at a high level and doing enough on all three phases to win the game. And that's the most important thing. It's not, hey, I want to look like this, I want to play like this. Like, we play significantly different from week to week. That's predicated on who we have and who they have. So I think that's the main point is I want us to be adaptable, you know, and you heard that in my press conference. Like, I take that to heart, coaches and players and schematics. You want to be adaptable. Yeah, you have to have a philosophy of what you want to get done, how you want to play a game. But I think that throughout the week of preparation, when the players understand the why behind why you're doing things, I think it helps their learning process. I think it helps their buy-in, and I think ultimately it should help them on game day.
You guys obviously had a tremendous defense. Hassan Reddick had some good years before last year, but obviously took it to a new level. Brandon Graham, I think when he came out of Michigan, I feel like his first 2 years he didn't play much, and he wasn't productive, and he got really good as the years went on. And the reason I bring that up is you've got two guys here in Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins who former first-round picks, and you know some fans have already kind of labeled. And obviously these guys are incredibly talented, very athletic. What do you see in those two guys, and what are your reasonable goals for them in year one, adjusting to a new defense and a new voice?
Yeah, I think they need to be impact players for us, and that's how we're treating them. You know, both of those guys are extremely intelligent, so everyone sees the physical skill set, but they don't know what they have in their brain. And that's what excites me the most about those two guys is their brain. And why that excites me is when they can understand why you're doing things and how we're deploying them, then and different rules for how they are deployed, it allows you to be creative with what you can do with them. So, and with how they fit into the whole defense. So, I'm very eager to get those two, you know, going. We're doing that right now, but you know, we're still kind of figuring that out a little bit with both of them. But even today we practiced, and both of them made some big time strides where it's like, all right, hey man, like just work on this one thing, and let's get this down before we kind of, you know, 221A before we go to 331A, you know. Sure. And I thought they both took a jump today, so that's good when you see that as a coach because all right, you gave them something to work on. Hey, I need to see this a little bit better before we do something else. And I saw it today where it's like, okay, there it is. And you can teach, all right, here's what we're looking for. And then you can move on to the next thing to make sure they master that, and then you move on to the next thing. And so, but, you know, those are only two guys. That you have to fit everybody, all 11 pieces in together to make the defense good. It's not about one or two guys.
And obviously you've got a lot of time to figure that out. You got a whole training camp. Who are some of the young guys early on here that have stood out to you that you really like and what you see in terms of – and it could just be guys that maybe are able to pick things up quickly, that maybe weren't high draft picks, or guys that were higher picks, or guys that have been around that weren't productive, that you're like, I think this guy's got a chance maybe with some of the things we'll do with him?
I wouldn't single anybody out, honestly, Dave. Like, we're kind of still figuring that out. I do like the rookie class where they're at from a standpoint of learning what we're trying to get done, how they handle their business on a daily basis, the weight room, the meeting rooms, the training room, on the practice field. Working on their body compositions, all those things. I think that I'm very pleased with those guys of how they're going about their business. And so I'm not going to single one out, but a lot of them have impressed me so far.
One guy I do want to get your thoughts on, and again, I realize it's June 2nd that we're recording this, and there's still a lot to be, a lot of time before even camp starts. But Jay Sanders, somebody that we saw flash here towards the end of last year when he got more reps. What do you think so far?
Yeah, he's got a unique skill set. You know what I mean? He can bend. He's explosive. He's got really good feel and coverage. When we drop him into coverage, and I think he can be one of our better rushers when it's all said and done. So he's just like everybody. He's got a lot to work on, part of his game too, but. He's taken the coaching. He doesn't make the same mistake twice, which I like, because then you can kind of keep moving on. You don't have to keep correcting certain things, but I got high hopes for him.
I want to ask you about the coaching staff, in particular the coordinators. Obviously, with Drew Petzing and Nick Rawlis, you're hiring two really young guys. What's your relationship with those guys? When did it start with each guy, and what got you to the point where you thought, hey, they can run an offense, they can run a defense?
Yeah, Drew I met in 2014. He was on Zim's staff, and he came with Norv Turner. So his first style of playing offense was kind of Norv. And then, Norv left, and Pat Shermer took over, and then Kevin Stefanski. I think DiFilippo was in there. Then Stefanski took over, and then Stefanski went to Cleveland and brought him with him. And Drew, went. He didn't skip any steps. He was a quality control first. Then he's a receivers coach. Then he's a tight ends coach. Then he's a quarterback coach. And I always thought Drew was about the right things as far as from a team standpoint, character standpoint. And I was just telling somebody the other day, I said, I don't have a very large network, but the network that I kind of talk a lot of ball with, like I'm selective with those guys that I talk with, because I know, one, they'll tell me the truth when I ask a question. Because a lot of coaches, well, I'm not going to tell you that. You know what I mean? So it's like,
really?
why am I wasting my time?
Coaches being vague?
Oh, yeah,
no.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But myself included, no, not at all. If you want to, you ask me anything, I'll tell you. But yeah, I liked his. I always thought like he was curious about the game, and hey, this is how Norv did it. But then I like this is what Shermer did, and then Kevin kind of changed this, and then he was with Kubiak for a little bit, and I just loved that he coached different positions on the offense, and really, I think at the end of the day, had the right answers with how we want to play as a team and as an offense. And so that's why Drew's the offense coordinator here. And then Nick, when I left to go to Indy, they bumped the quality control up to my spot, and then they hired Nick as the quality control. And the guy that they bumped up to my spot, who was a quality control in Minnesota at the time, he's the linebacker coach with the Chargers right now. I always thought he was really, really good. And he went with Kevin, too. He was the DB coach in Cleveland. Now he's with Brandon Staley in L.A. But I remember him calling me, and he was like, dude, this guy that we just hired is a freaking home run. And I'm like, what do you mean, man? Like, you know what I mean? Come on. He's not better than me. He's not better than you, right? He's like, dude, I think he's better than both of us, and not even close. And so I was like, well, let me meet this guy. You know what I mean? And I remember I met with him at the Combine when he was a quality control. So this was probably after my first year in Indy, I think. And I remember I called Gina. I met with him and for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we talked football. And I called my wife, and I was like, man, if I get a coordinator job, I got to hire this guy. Like he was lights out. So that's what I did. So, and he was with Zim too, so he knew some of the things that I like to do. And then he was very curious about what we did in Indy, different style of defense, how you guys do that, this and that. And so then when I went to Philly, I hired him as a linebacker coach. He was there for 2 years. And, just talking through him through the interview process, obviously he was with me for 2 years as a position coach for me. So he kind of knows, how I kind of want to play, how I go about our business, how, what's important to me for a defense. And he echoes those things. But I really think what I'm very excited to see is he's changed a lot already. It wasn't, hey, this is like when he went into the defensive meeting, this is not the 2021 Philadelphia Eagles playbook. Why? Well, because you guys are different than they are. You know what I mean? And the game's different, or 2022 Eagles. It's 2023. Like, the game's different, and we have different players. So we're going to do things a little bit differently. So I really like both of their command over the entire unit, their command over the position coaches, meaning with the position coaches, not over them, meaning that, they know all the details of each position. And I think that they're not dogmatic, to use your word, Dave, is they ask for input. You know what I mean? They use everybody's brain in those rooms, and I think that's extremely important to make sure it's not whose idea. Like, let's just get the right idea and the right way to do it for us, and I think it's been pretty cool to watch both of those guys.
I got about a few more questions. We'll let you go. I'm curious because most first-year head coaches, when you ask what the biggest challenge is, they'll say it's – after they get through a year, they're like, man, it's all the other stuff. It's the media obligations. It's managing things you never even thought about as an assistant or a coordinator. What have you found to be most challenging so far, realizing, again, that we're in early June here and we're not even near the season?
Yeah, I think I've had really good mentors. I feel like they prepped me for a good job because, someone called me or someone texted me and said, hey, how you holding up? And you don't know the tone in a text, right? But the tone of how you holding up is, I'm sure you're struggling right now with it. Whatever is going on of a first-year head coach. And I said, I literally text back, this is the best job I ever had. Like, it's awesome. You know what I mean? I don't mind. I think what I would say is a lot of balls in the air. I was a little late to this. I apologize. But it's like, all right, I'm in with the defense. I'm in with the offense. I'm in with special teams. I'm doing the schedule. I'm talking about hotels with this guy. I'm talking about logistics for camp for this. But I don't really mind that. I kind of like that. You know what I mean? You just got to be focused and detailed, and you got to take all the information in, and you got to make decisions. And then when you make a decision, we just change something for next week. It says, you know what, we're not getting out of what I wanted to get out of this. We're not getting out of it. So let's put our heads together and change this. And I think as long as you can be, focused on the task at hand with what you're doing, but then also be able to juggle the different balls in the air, then you should be okay. But there's a lot of things that come across my desk every day that it's like, wow, like, all right, well, let's talk about that. You know what I mean? We gotta make a decision on this. You know what I mean? So I would say that just really your time management, and that's not too much different than being a coordinator or a position coach. Now you do deal with more people in the building, but I kind of like that.
We had Monty on last month. He detailed draft night and the tense moments. And I'm curious your take on it because I assume you've been in draft rooms before, but not as the head coach.
Correct.
So
Correct.
What was that like for you?
It was an awesome experience. I said, there's no doubt I was more nervous than he was. And it was really cool to kind of watch that process and how it all came about, and just, leading up for 2 or 3 months since we've been here talking about the draft and all the things that could happen and what we're trying to get out of it and this and that. And then you start doing the mock drafts and where we're going to pick and who's going to be there and who do we want, who do we feel good about, all those kinds of things. It was like he gave me 100 scenarios. And the scenario that happened on draft night, we really didn't talk about. Now, we had prepped for it. He had prepped for it, but it was a little bit different with who got picked in front of us and this and that. And it was just really cool. He was I always talk to the coaches about, especially on game day, emotional stability. Like, you got to be, pretty flatline. Football's an emotional game, and yes, your emotions run hot. But, like, if your emotions turn into a negative, then you got to be able to subdue them somehow. And I thought that everything that was going on, phone calls, 3-4 guys are on the phone. He's on 2 different phones. The clock's running down. I'm like, God, this feels worse to me than a 2-minute drive, like when they're getting ready to score. You know what I mean? It was like, holy cow, like, Monty, what are we going to do, man? There was a minute 50 on the clock. You know what I mean? But it was really cool, and he obviously did a great job. And being the first time he's ever really done that in that seat, I think he hit it out of the park.
You end up with Paris Johnson. What are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, I mean, he's a stud. He's everything that you want in your first pick of your regime. I think he's a team first guy. He's a versatile player. He's smart. He's got obviously a big time skill set, and he's been really a joy to be around. So he's going to be a really good player.
I keep hearing that Kyler Murray has been here early. He's been here often. He's all in. What have been your takeaways in your conversations? Because obviously we can't know for sure how Kyler's going to be until he comes back healthy. Mm-hmm. But just based on conversations and work ethic and things you've seen from him, what do you like?
Yeah, I mean, as a head coach, you got to have and I'm not an offensive guy. I'm not going to call the offensive plays, but you want a big time relationship with the quarterback, because the quarterback's the most person that's a coach on the field, I think, and just to talk football with him and philosophy of this or what's hard or what's good, or hey, when we played you, this is what I was trying to do. This is what I was worried about. That's why you saw this or saw that. Teams are going to try to counterbalance your skill set by doing this. Some teams might play you this way. Some teams might play you this way. And it's just been good to really, connect with him and develop a relationship on and off the field, or in the building and out of the building. But I know this. I'm excited when he gets back, because I think he's got what you're looking for in the franchise player of your organization, and I think ultimately, he's got fire in his gut, big time competitor, and he's going to will his team to win. So I'm excited that he's on our squad.
Without putting words in your mouth, I have to assume when you were game planning for him, there are things he does that other people can't do, so that means longer hours for you and trying to figure out, okay, we've got to be really concerned about A, B, and C as opposed to maybe just A and B for other quarterbacks.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And you better have those answers before Monday, before you play him. You know what I mean? Because it's too hard to try to get that done in 5-6 days. So that's why you got to research in the offseason and study guys that, have similar skill sets to him. But yeah, he presents big-time challenges for a defense because of, his mobility, and obviously he's the arm talent he has. He can make every throw and make the right reads and deliver it on time and put it in tight windows. But then, you got to rush him a certain way. You got to be careful about certain pressures when you pressure him. And, he's a headache to prepare for.
Last one. Even Bill Belichick takes the cape off, meaning he's got a life outside of football when he's not grinding like he does. We see Bill Belichick having extracurricular activities. What are yours? When you're not grinding away, and maybe when before your family was here, it was all football. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's changed now because the kids are around. But what are some of the things you do to unwind, take your mind off of football?
You hit it. I mean, the family. Yeah. You know what I mean? I like to spend time with the family. Date night's always extremely cool for me. I'm grateful for my wife. But, I think I do a pretty good job of when I go home. I kind of leave it at home. Now, that part's changed being a head coach. I will say, going back to your question about being a head coach, like I used to laugh. Like when I was out of the building, all my other jobs, that phone was put away and I didn't have to respond to anybody for the most part. Now that phone kind of rings about certain things. I'm like, I got to take this. You know what I mean? So that part changed a little bit, but I like to play golf. I like to work out, but it's funny about taking your mind off of it, because it'll be hole 3 or 4. I'm like, hey, what are we doing in that one blitz? You know what I mean? What are we? Is that the right thing? Or, when you're working out, that's a good time. I feel like that's a good mental release, or to get your brain going a little bit. And it's like, you schedule 45 minutes for a workout, and it's like it gets 30 in, and you're like, man, I need to go watch some tape right now because I just had an idea or something like that. So. But I do think you do want to stay balanced, and I think that is part of if people say I have pretty good energy, I think that's part of it. You know what I mean? I try to get enough rest. I work out. You know what I mean? I think that's part of your physical. We had Coach Peterson in here from Boise and Washington. He came and watched practice today. And it was really cool to hear, obviously a long-time successful head coach. And he was like, I said, what you got for me, coach? Like, give me the answers, And he had some really cool things to talk about. But he was like, the people that I don't want to say aren't successful in the job, but they, the pressure and there's all this stuff going on, this and that, and they're not really healthy humans. And that kind of hit me. I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, you better work out, you better sleep, because that impacts your emotions, how you handle people, that impacts your energy levels when you're with the players. Like, and they see that. They see you walk into a meeting dragging butt. Well, what do you think they're going to do? You know what I mean? So I do believe in trying to stay fully functioning, mental and physically healthy to do your job the best you can do it. So, but play a little golf, shop a little bit, go out to dinner, play with the kids, lift, weights. That's about it.
So along those lines, in closing, will you have a routine set up, a schedule for in season of, okay, I need to make sure I'm getting X amount of sleep. I need to make sure I'm up at this time, working out, making sure I'm I'm compartmentalizing, setting aside time just for the kids, just for my wife, still doing date night. Do you have that all planned out?
Yeah,
yet?
But I think you got to go through, because I had that planned out as I was a coordinator in 2021, and it changed after week 3. I was like, no, I got to restructure how I'm doing things. You know what I mean? I'm not getting, whatever it was. So I think that'll be a little bit of a learning process for myself. And even when you develop your process and what you're convicted on, what works for you, I think that always kind of can change a little bit. I thought like after kind of like the middle of the year, my first year as a coordinator, I kind of changed how I was doing a couple things early in the week, and that helped me. And then, then I figured like at my second year as a coordinator, I kind of changed early in the year about what I was doing. And I think that you can continually get better a little bit at all your process, and it takes some time, and an experience does help you there where, all right, I did this for 4 weeks and I felt like this. I need to, adjust this, or I need to put more time to this. Whatever it is, I think that's the main thing is stick with your process, what works for you, but don't be afraid to change it when you know that you think you can tweak it to get it a little bit better.
Well, again, I think the thing that stands out, Coach, just spending time with you is your energy, your passion, your love for your job. I think people appreciate that. When coaches love their job, but that they are relatable and friendly, which you are both, it stands out. So I really enjoyed this and look forward to get to know you over the course of the year, Coach.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.